Hey everyone, and welcome to this session of Thursdays with Sandy. We're so glad that you are here. Just a quick overview of what our talking points are today. We do want to welcome everyone, however you have found your way here today. We are glad that you made it. And just a quick reminder that we offer this session once a month. Thursdays with Sandy always meets on the third Thursday of every month, and all are welcome. And we try to touch on whatever current industry hot topics there might be. And we are also open to suggestions. And we also like to say that we really value a true conversation versus just a presentation. And while we certainly do have slides to share, we would encourage and invite everyone to chime in the chat box, or feel free to take the mic if you wish. First of all, why do we say Thursdays and spell it H-E-R? There is a new national organization that supports people in the title industry called HER, the Title Collective. And I'm going to post that link in the chat box. One moment. And there are local chapters in many states, as well as virtual sessions like this one, which you're welcome to attend. Hi, welcome those of you who are just joining us. And then I thought I'd introduce who we are. We are Real Estate Closing Path, and we offer training in all of the closing fundamentals. And I'm going to post a link to our current website as well. We like to say that we provide structured training. So if you have a new hire, someone's looking for a new career, maybe just brand new to the industry, we can take them from, well, I was going to say start to finish, but we can give them an overview of all that they would need to know to feel more confident to begin in this industry. And then we also have title agents, attorneys, paralegal staff, office staff who join us, someone who may be cross-training in the industry, or we have attorneys join us, maybe they've been in immigration or injury law and they want to add on real estate. And so our training workshops would be a good way, an onboarding tool to do that. So again, if you're interested, I'm going to go ahead and type our email address in the chat box as well. You can reach out to me at info@realestateclosingpath, and that's .org. So today's topic, we are covering 5 communication essentials, things that you should be doing and should be saying in your day-to-day role in the title industry, but then 5 very important things not to say. So listen up. I do want to go ahead and introduce our lead educator, Sandi Donaldson. She has over 40 years of experience in mortgage and real estate settlement. She has worked with large and small firms and engaged in all aspects of the closing process. She is known for her wit and wisdom and has collaborated on curriculum development and led instruction for RECP. And actually, that's been for 5 years now. Just in August, we have celebrated our 5-year anniversary. So we have come a long way in that time. So I'm just going to turn things over to Sandi, if you will. Why don't you get us started and walk us into what we should be saying in the office?
Okay. And we're going to sort of zoom through these so we can get everything in. But the first thing is listen more than you talk. And again, I always say every one of these statements ends with a period, but it could end with a comma, Sandi, because I have done every one of these things wrong. And it's sort of like telling your kid not to put their hand on the stove, right? You're telling them that because you did it and it hurt. And so you don't want them to suffer that. And that's kind of how I feel. I've done all these things wrong. So I don't want any of you to have to suffer the consequences of that. But sometimes we never know what we're going to get when we pick up the phone, right? So sometimes people just want to be heard. And it's very hard to solve a problem when we don't know what the problem is. So we have to listen. Oftentimes we listen to respond rather than listening to understand. So, when I listen and I hear what they say, then I would say to them, so what I hear you saying is ABC, and they may say, yes, that's exactly it. Or they may go, that's not what I said at all. So before I start trying to solve their problem, I better be sure that I understand what the problem actually is, right? So our next thing is that we want to be more proactive than reactive. There are a lot of things that happen. I would leave the office every day with a notepad beside my keyboard, a list of all the things that I need to do, priorities for in the morning. And then I come in and I have, 80 urgent emails since I left the night before, right? So now your list goes in file 13. Um, and while that is true, we need to not let the urgent outweigh the important, because they will become urgent if we um don't address them. So, we want to be sure that we are planning ahead. We are looking for things to happen. We're not waiting for the shoe to drop. We have to be vigilant about file status. Today is Thursday, so I'm not calling the lender today asking about stuff that's supposed to close tomorrow, because I've already done that. I'm calling today asking about stuff that's closing next Friday. I'm trying to, they may not know, but at least now I'm on their radar. So I'm going to try to be as proactive as possible. We want to be really careful what we put in writing. Way back in the 50s, my mother was on the newspaper staff, and she used to tell us as children, don't put anything in writing you don't want to see on the front page of the paper. Well, now that advice is don't put anything in writing you don't want to see on X or Instagram or whatever. I don't really understand how, if I delete something and then I delete it from my deleted, it's still there. Somebody has it, in a now deleted tweet. We see that all the time. And so we know that email is forever. It can be our biggest ammunition, for when somebody says, you didn't tell me that, or I never said that. I save every email so that when they say, I never said that, I can forward the email where they said it and say, please see below. My very favorite email to write, but also our emails that we write can be ammunition used against us. So be careful what you say in writing, because we all know, not just in our industry, but in every industry, when things don't go somebody's way, everybody's looking for somebody to blame. So I'm going to try to be sure that I've done everything I can to make sure it's not me, right? That I've kept all my emails, I've stayed on top of that, and I've not said, reply all is not your friend. Because there are, tell my children, everything that comes up doesn't have to come out. We don't have to tell everything we know to everybody, so we have to be honest but discreet. So be careful what we say. I don't need to tell the buyer the seller has a $200,000 IRS lien unless I can't get that resolved and I see that it's going to result in a delay. So, we need to do our work without sending out the red alert to everybody, because a lot of stuff that we do would alarm everybody if they knew all the inside details, right? But we're just doing our job. So we just kind of need to keep that in mind and be cautious about what we put in writing. And then this is the hardest one for me. Offer whatever honest explanation I can and shut up. You know, again, sometimes we think if I keep talking, I can talk them into agreeing with me. When really what I'm doing is digging the hole deeper, right? So continuing to talk is not necessarily going to solve my problem, for sure. Um, so I just need to tell the truth and shut up, right? Because there's only one story. If they say, have you got my package? No, I haven't received the package from the lender yet. I have a call into them, and when I hear back from them, I will let you know. There you go. You've said the explanation. Once you've said the explanation, shut up, because there's nothing else to say. So sometimes they'll want us to keep talking, because while we think we can talk them into agreeing with us, they think they can talk us into agreeing with them. So I have a friend in this industry that used to say, you tell the truth, and whoever speaks next loses. So, got to be careful about what we say and how much we say. I can't tell you how many social events I've left going, I talked too much, didn't I? Because you can probably already tell in 11 minutes, I like to talk, and so I'm going to keep talking to fill the space. The silence is uncomfortable for me, but sometimes it's all there is. So we just have to remember that we tell the truth and then stop talking. Don't continue to beat the dead horse. And then finally, and one of the biggest things, and this is a real issue in our industry, is don't make promises that you cannot personally deliver. I cannot promise what somebody else will do. I can promise what I will do. Again, like I said just a minute ago, I've got to call into the lender. When I hear back from them, I will let you know what they said. I can promise that. Even if the lender has said, I'll have that package to you in an hour, I can say the lender told me they will have it to me, but I can't guarantee they will have it to me because I don't know. If a payoff lender has promised me the payoff in 48 hours, I can say this is what they've told me their turn time is, but I can't guarantee they're actually going to do it in that time frame. So the easiest thing in the world for us is to say whatever we think they want to hear and get them off the phone or get that email replied to, and now we've dealt with it. And I think every one of us probably has a story about a time that has come back to bite us, because we promised something that we couldn't deliver. And now we're in what my daddy would call a mail of a hess because we've made a promise that we can't keep, and out there, I used to work in lending for a long time before I transitioned over to the closing side. And one of the first things I heard is lawyers are liars. We've heard buyers are liars, right? So we are trying to dispel the myth that from a settlement perspective, we're lying. So I'm not going to make a promise that I can't keep, that I have to walk back, because there's enough of that in the world, and so our business is built on relationships, right? I mean, we know we're in a service business. Why is somebody going to close with us rather than the person down the street? And it's not going to be because of money, because we know title insurance rates or book rates, they're pretty much the same no matter who you write on or who the settlement agent is. They're going to be within dollars of each other. And then our settlement fees have to be reasonably in line with our market. Otherwise, we would be overpriced and we'd never get any business. So it's not really about fees. People like to do business with their friends. They like to do business with people they trust. So we're trying to cultivate a relationship of trust. So, I've said before, I would love to tell you what you want to hear, but I can't make that promise because it's out of my control. That is the truth. And so if I say, I will call you at 10 a.m. and give you the update, then call them at 10 a.m. and tell them, I've still not heard back and I've emailed them again, or whatever our situation is. If I promise to keep you updated, I will keep you updated. But I may not have any further information to give because I may not have received anything further, but we want them to know that we're trying, right? And we're trying to build that relationship based on trust. So those are the things that we want to be sure that we do. We want to listen more than we talk. Be proactive. Be cautious what we put in writing, be honest, and then close our mouth, and only promise what we can personally deliver. Those are the things that if we do those things, we are fostering a culture of honesty, integrity, and staying on top of things. We want people to believe that we are, you've heard the situation about, do you want it done quickly or do you want it done correctly? And the answer is yes. We want both, right? Everybody wants both. And in the days that we have now of instant gratification, everybody wants both right now. So we have to do what we can to accommodate that. But part of our job is creating realistic expectations. So I've got to establish what those expectations are, and that is my responsibility. So if those are the things that we do, what are the things that we don't do, that we shouldn't do? Things not to say to clients. So firstly, when they say, so we're going to be able to close by the contract date, right? Oh, sure. I don't know that for sure. I can assume that, if I get a contract and has a 30-day close, probably, unless I have a big title problem, which I don't know about yet because I haven't received my title report. So I don't know yet, so I can't promise that for sure. So I just have to be really careful about that because they will latch onto that. If I say, sure, no problem, they will latch onto that. And the next thing you know, it'll be, well, Sandi said we could. So I've made a promise, that I've written a check I can't cash. Right. So I've got to be really careful about that. So the next thing is about promising our documentation, for example, a payoff statement. I'll have that payoff in the morning. I can say the payoff lender assured me I will have it in the morning and I will let you know if I've received it or not. But I can't promise that because out of my control. Unfortunately, there's a lot out of our control. But if we feel like there are so many things that we don't control, imagine how our buyers and sellers feel. There's so many more things they don't control, and they don't really understand our process. And so sometimes they seem like the pest of the month when really they're just trying to understand what's going on, what the process is. By the time they get to us in our current market, almost all of the buyers with accepted contracts have been pre-approved by their lenders. So they think it's smooth sailing from here on out because we've already been pre-approved. So we're just waiting on the appraisal. And since the title report reflects on the property and the seller, the buyer's not concerned about that at all because that falls into the category of our problem, right? They're not worried about that at all. So we just have to be really careful about what we promise because I promise whatever, I can promise you this, whatever we say as a promise, somebody will come back and bring that up to us, but you promised. And that's the worst feeling in the world, to know that we promised and I couldn't keep my promise, right? So the next thing is sometimes they've called us almost to the point of harassment. You see their name on the caller ID or you see their email address in a preview in your Outlook and you just roll your eyes, So we want to say, listen, this is not normal. You're not being reasonable. Now, I might tell the agent, your client is being unreasonable, but I'm not going to say that to the client because remember, while we may close 20, 30, 40 transactions a month or more, to the parties in this transaction, this is the only thing happening. This is the only thing happening in the world. Psychologists tell us the 3 most stressful events in life are death, divorce, and buying a house. And sometimes buying or selling a property involves death or divorce. So this is very stressful, and they don't care what else we're doing. So we don't have to take abuse. Certainly if somebody's going off on me on the phone, I will say, listen, I would love to help you. And when we can talk about this reasonably, I'll be perfectly willing to have a conversation with you. But for now, this conversation is over, and hang up the phone. We don't have to take the abuse. And I've done that. But we do have to remember that yeah, sometimes it is tough love. We do, and sometimes they don't even realize it. They're just upset. They don't even, and they'll go, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And I've said it to people. I had a blowout last year with Best Buy about installing my TV, my bracket in the wall. So it took forever, and I was, irritated with the fourth customer service that person I talked to. And then I realized it's not his fault. He has no idea what any of these people before have said to me. He has no idea what the person in the store promised me. He's just trying to resolve my problem, you know? And so sometimes they do that. But if you're on the phone with somebody and them being unreasonable becomes abusive, you can say what I said. I'm happy to talk to you when we can talk about this, in a calm manner. And then you can hang up the phone. Or you can put them on hold. And then I would go to my supervisor and go, listen, I've got somebody irate on the phone. And sometimes if they talk to the supervisor or the attorney or whoever, they feel like they've done their part because now they've moved up the food chain. So they feel like they've done a big thing. And sometimes that person's going to say whatever we say, but they just feel like they've accomplished something because now they've talked to the boss. Okay. 99 times out of 100, my supervisor has said, what have you already told them? And I tell them, and they say exactly the same thing. So that's generally the way it works. But as a rule, I had one of the attorneys that I worked for one time say to me, you and I may duke it out behind closed doors, but publicly we are a united front. Just like parents, we can go in the bedroom and argue about what the punishment should be, but when we come out and talk to the kid, we're on the same page. And that is the atmosphere that we want to have in our offices, that we are all working toward the same end. We also don't want to say, well, you should have been told that by your lender or your realtor. We don't want to throw anybody under the bus because we don't want them throwing us under the bus. Also, remember, in our industry, buyers and sellers come and go. But the realtors primarily and the lenders, they're our repeat customers. They are people that we are going to get referrals from in the future. These agents send us, if we do a great job, they send us all their contracts, right? And then when the market turns, which it will, lenders that we have a great relationship with, now we're going to be getting their title requests for refinances because we've done such a great job and communicated so well with them. So we just need to keep that in mind. So we don't want to throw anybody under the bus. But if I'm frustrated with the lender or the agent, I need to go directly to them. I need to say, listen, here's my frustration. And you may have had a conversation that I don't know anything about with this person. So, keep that in mind. Some people, my husband tells me all the time, everybody doesn't think like you. And my response is, well, they should, but they don't, right? Everybody doesn't think like us. Everybody doesn't operate just like us. They're not as all diligent as we think we are, or as we think they should be. But we don't want to be the cultivators of conflict, right? We are the harvesters of good vibes, but we don't want to be the cultivator. You're not going to get any good vibes if you've sown conflict. So we don't want to start out that way, in any way. And then finally, when I go, well, listen, I've got 5 other closings today, so let me deal with that. And they do not care. They don't care if I've got a closing every half hour for the next 6 weeks. They don't care. We're busy and we're stressed right? I mean, it's a wonder. That's why I have short hair. It's a wonder I have any hair. I pulled it out over 40 years. But the parties in the transaction deserve our full attention when we're talking to them and our best effort. Every one of them do. So if we're overwhelmed, I used to go in the bathroom, cry for a minute, and then I've released all that. I cry when I'm irritated or angry or frustrated, not just being upset, but crying is how some people scream, I cry. So then, because I've said to Janis before, just let me have my fit and then I'll be fine, And so that's the way I deal with it, but I deal with it privately. And then I can take a breath and deal with this person. And depending on what time of the month it is, if you're the pre-closer and it's the beginning of the month, you're busy because you come into your office on Monday morning, you've got 20 new contracts in your inbox, right? Because everybody's been showing property over the weekend. So we're busy. If it's the end of the month and you're the closer or the post-closer, you're covered up. You got 3 closing packages in your inbox that are closing this afternoon. I don't have time for this phone call. But the person on the phone doesn't know that. Nor do they care. Because again, what's happening to them is the only thing happening in the world. Their furniture's on a truck. The seller's got another closing across town in 30 minutes, which their agent should have never let them schedule, but nonetheless. So we run into all kind of things like that. But remember that the realtors in particular are the drivers of our business. So we don't want to tick them off if we can help it, right? I've had to fire a realtor that was not a good fit for our firm because she kept bringing us contracts that all had horrendous title problems and they never closed. So you spin your wheels every month on 2 or 3 transactions that don't close. So that's money out the window, right? But we want them to feel like their business is our priority. While we're talking to them, they have other transactions too, right? The realtors do, and the lenders do. But we want them to feel like while we're dealing with them, they are our priority. If I go to the doctor, I don't care how many people are waiting in the waiting room. When I get in there, don't rush me out because it's my turn. And it's the same kind of thing. It's their turn. So we have to remember to prioritize them and not let them, if we can help it, see our frustration and our stress. We do play a lot of parts, right? We're private investigators sometimes, we're therapists sometimes, we're parent figures sometimes. And everybody we work with isn't responsive. They're not always even nice. Sometimes we feel like you don't deserve my courtesy. But that says more about us than them. I have to live with how I treated people, not how they treated me. How they treated me is their problem. They're accountable for that. I'm not. As a teenager, I was a cheerleader, and we made banners every week for the team to run. We called them run throughs for the team to run through, and they were signs about the other team. And sometimes people wanted to say things like kill the Bears, the other team or something like that. Well, I wasn't allowed to participate in that. My mother didn't allow it. I was not allowed to do cheers against the other team. My husband, who I went to high school with, tells me that he thought I was the supervisor, the cheerleading supervisor, because sometimes they would do cheers and I'm standing on the track with my hands behind my back because it was cheers I was not allowed to participate in because they were against the other team. Because my mother said to me, someone else's bad behavior does not justify my bad behavior. So I've got to keep that in mind. I can't say that because you treated me this way, I'm going to treat you this way, because my behavior depends on me and nothing else. So I can't control what they do, but I can control how I respond.
So good, Sandi. I really enjoy hearing your perspective. You have so many good stories from your time in the industry, and I always hear something new. I think the one that really stood out to me today is don't promise what you personally can't deliver. Better for someone to be pleasantly surprised when everything goes well, than to be disappointed, and you don't want to let someone down. So just lots of good takeaways today. And we're happy to pause here. I think I did see someone with a question coming through. One moment. Or if I've missed your hand, or if you want to post anything in the chat box, any question maybe for a situation you've run into in your office, if you would love some advice or perspective on how you could handle a stressful situation. I do want to go ahead and share that we have something that we provide to our students in all training workshops called customer service scripts. It's a little different than the presentation today, but it's word for word things that you can say to empower yourself to know how to handle certain situations so they don't escalate out of control. And if you want to email me, again, I'm going to post this in the chat box, info@, and it's realestateClosingPath.org. I'll be happy to send that to you. Just say, hey, I was in the session today. I'm interested in the customer service scripts. I do also want to let the group know of some upcoming training that we have coming up in September. I'm also going to repost our website address. We have 2 coming up in September, a 2 for Tuesday, a title bundle, dissecting title searches and title commitment anatomy. If you or anyone on your team might be interested in that. And then we have another 2 for Tuesday called ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, where we cover deeds and lender basics. Those are just some things that you might want to check out. We'll be doing this again next month, again, just completely free and open for everyone to attend and watch our newsletter or LinkedIn, all of our social media platforms, and we'll announce the topic. But the day and time will be Thursday, September 17th at 11 a.m. And again, we invite you to follow us on all of the social media platforms, wherever you like to network professionally. We do have a YouTube channel. By the way, if you missed part of this presentation today, we do have a playlist on our YouTube channel that is all of the Thursday with Sandi recordings. So you could go back and rewatch any of those. The one last month was really interesting. It was called Regulatory Limbo. And if you would love some insight on some of the industry hot topics, again, you might find that particularly interesting. This slide shows some of the more virtual training workshops that we provide. We can offer these as a lunch and learn. We can customize any training. And again, feel free to reach out to us and we'll be happy to discuss whatever your firm may need. All of our workshops are accredited right now in Georgia and Florida, an attorney state and a title state, and we'd be happy to adapt any of our material for your location as well. So thank you so much. You are very welcome. Again, it's an honor to have you here today, and we hope to see you next time. Yeah, everyone take care. Thanks, Sandi.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, bye-bye.